Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and I am excited to have XYPN member Chris Jackson, founder of Lion Share Partners, a fee-only firm based in LA, on the show today. Chris has an absolutely incredible story of perseverance. Chris was an orphan that found theater as a kid, which he said saved him, and ultimately he went on to get his degree in theater. In 2009, the recession led him to being homeless and living out of his car before an amazing string of events landed him at a job at a financial planning firm. He has since gone on to start his own firm and is now shifting his focus to working with attorneys. He told me it took him a little bit to get on board with the idea of having a niche, but he is all in now. Chris also shares some details from leaving his previous firm and being sued for violating his employment agreement. And we talked about what that process was like and how he handled it. This entire episode is full of just great advice and inspiration, so you are not going to want to miss a second of it. This month's episodes are brought to you by AdvicePay, the first and only compliant payment processor built specifically for financial advisors. Manage and allow your clients to pay all of your one-time invoices and recurring fees via credit card or ACH. For the first time, advisors can have their clients paying monthly, quarterly, or semi-annually without having to log in and make payments every time. Multi-advisor firms can take advantage of the enterprise version, which allows the firm to manage payments and invoices across all of their advisors. All of this while never triggering custody. See it for yourself by signing up for a 14-day free trial of the platform at www.advicepay.com. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/159. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Chris. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
So I will warn listeners that we did we were in the pre-call and Chris was giving me some background, and I will tell you it is awesome. I'm so excited to dig into some of these various pieces. So give me just a quick overview of the firm. Where are you located? How many clients you have? What's your niche? When did you get started? And then we'll start from there.
Yeah, I'm a solo practitioner from virtually. I kind of work virtually out of my apartment here in Los Angeles. I got about 30 clients, and I came from a large national RIA prior to launching Lion Share Partners. So my book of business is eclectic. I got retirees, small business owners, young money, windfall money, high income, low assets. It's all over the place because it's kind of the book of business that carry over with me. Right now, kind of through working through Pat Brewer Consulting, I'm kind of focusing on attorneys. I have a pretty good network there, and I've been working on an ebook right now as part of my kind of freemium as I push forward and kind of break into that community.
Yeah. So have you started the push into the attorney niche, or is that sort of the overarching plan at this point?
That's the overarching plan. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of my friends who are either partners in law firms or pretty high up, and I did a short kind of presentation on where I think I can provide some value, and they liked it, and they are pretty much are kind of reaching out and saying, hey, we want you to come in and either do a presentation, or we'll allow you to actually go door to door and kind of present this value add to our senior associates and even law partners.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll definitely talk more about that. So tell me a little bit about your career path. Have you always been interested in being a financial planner, or how'd you get started?
I had zero interest in being a financial planner. I didn't know what a stock or a bond was until I was about 27. I was a theater major, so I grew up in foster home, foster care, pretty much my entire childhood. And one of the things that kind of saved me was theater and being part of using the creative, people call art therapy, but using that creative space to kind of get me out of that tough time. I did very well. I was in comedy sports and improv, and I always wanted to write for SNL. And I got into UCLA theater department and kind of thrived there. Graduated in 2005, tried to jump into some stand-up and do some improv, and then got hit by the Great Recession. And it wasn't a good time to be a theater major in Los Angeles. And I was pretty much living out of my car and out of my girlfriend's apartment at the time. And it was just a really good space. And I was bouncing around at temp agencies and it just wasn't really working for me. And I got a call from a temp agency and they were like, "You're Chris Jackson, the finance major." And I was like, "Yes, I am." And they're like, "Well, we got a big interview for you next week at Churchill Management Group, a pretty large RIA here in Los Angeles." And I took the interview. It was actually on my birthday. I knew nothing about the financial management field. I did a little bit of real estate financing during the 2006, 2007 boom, where they will literally take anyone off the street if they can pick up a phone and call and read a script. So I knew a little bit, but nowhere near what I needed to know for this position. And I tried to be just as funny and candid as possible. I mocked the exam they had because I had no idea what the hell it was. And I think they just liked my charm and how different I was compared to all the other candidates. And they were only paying, the position was $28,000 a year.
Oh,
so
wow.
it wasn't a huge capital expenditure to actually hire me. And they pretty much said, "Hey, we're going to give you 2 weeks. We like you. We'll see what you can do so you can pick up." So I immediately took the job. One of the first things I did was I Googled like RIA and the field I'm in, and Rick Ellerman popped up. And it was like, number one, RIA, Barron's, the last 2 years. And I went and I maxed out my credit card, just buying his books, went to one of his seminars. Then I bought more books. And for the next just 2 months, all I did was consume myself with Nick Murray and Rick Ellerman, all these podcasts. And then I came across Michael Kitces as well, where I was like, oh, there's a whole new level behind just managing money and personal finance. So that was my story, and how I got into the industry.
What an amazing story. That is just, especially for those of us who, I knew, from college, I was going to get into financial planning. To hear someone who, truly didn't know anything about personal finance or financial planning and just like randomly got a call. I mean, did they think you were, did you like accidentally tell them you were a finance major? You think they got the wrong Chris Jackson on the phone? Like,
oh, it was definitely the wrong Chris Jackson. Because they mentioned the wrong school. Because again, it's an interview, so they're kind of going through. Tell us about your time at Qualcomm. And I was like, "Oh, Qualcomm, San Diego." So it's like I'm like, what the hell is going on? So eventually, it wasn't until I actually got the job that I told them the next day. I was like, "Hey, by the way, that was the wrong Chris Jackson," because I knew they're going to go back to the temp agency, and the temp agency was going to, assume, because they're going to get paid on this because they provided. I didn't want them to be the first to tell them. I want to be like, "Hey, you know what? I'm not the right guy." And they liked that. And they appreciated the candidness of it. And they still gave me the chance. And through just natural attrition, I was able to kind of move and rise through the ranks. But, the one thing I noticed about Churchill, the one thing that I appreciate about Churchill is, in this industry, and we talked about this a couple of times on the podcast, and even in XYPN, this idea of a lack of diversity and representation in the personal finance field. At Churchill, which is a small shop in the sense of relative to some of the larger RIAs, but there were African Americans working in high level sales positions. The person in charge of accounting was African American. The most feared person in the office was a woman. They had gay representation in the office. So the concept of, the personal finance industry lacks representation was completely lost on me because my first job was the United Nations, So I remember sitting in my desk and the founder, Fred Fern, founded the company in the 1960s. I'm in my desk and he walks into Eileen Holmes's office, and she is one of the senior partners of the firm as well. And she's like, "Shut up, Fred! Get out of my office! You don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, he's going to get fired! You can't talk to the And that was the kind of the welcoming environment that they had. So it allowed me to not really think about, I don't belong here, because you always self-identify. At least I always self-identify when I walk into a space where I feel like, man, I'm just not going to be the right look. And I had that going in when I was in performing arts and acting. I had that where it's like, I'm not going to get this part because this part is not written for an African American. So when I walk into the personal finance or investment management field, I felt the same way. I was like, there's not a lot of me in this field. are people going to want to allow me access to their personal life and their money in a very intimate level? And thankfully at Churchill, it's a national-based firm. Your book of business is all throughout the country. So when you're connecting and talking to your clients about their portfolio, it's all on the phone. Well, it's all GoToMeeting without the video. So I can change my voice. When I'm talking to women, I can drop it down a notch. I can be slower. So I can encompass a lot of things I learned voice-wise in acting if I really wanted to shield my race sometimes. There's definitely times where I'm talking to people in the South, not to pick on the South, and jokes are coming on where I'm like, I have to let them know, hey, I know this is going, but just so you know, and I'm African American.
So you've actually had to address that because they didn't know, and they're saying things that are inappropriate in any circumstance, and they don't even realize they're on the phone.
Yes.
with
Well, I know where that joke is going, and we're good friends. So it wasn't. So I was like, hey, this is not fair to you because you hear me on the phone. There is no signature of my face. I'm not on the website. So your assumption might be something different. And I don't want, and you might be thinking this is a private conversation. It is a private conversation. And I want to make sure that you're aware of all the facts before you go forward, because I want to be fair to you. I don't want to feel like I entrapped you into in a way. So, but it was a great training experience.
It's crazy. Kathleen Boyd was on the show a few months ago, and she said that, people will tell her she doesn't look gay. And that she's always just like, what the heck? And so for you, it's like, well, you don't sound black. So therefore you must not. And it's just like, oh my God, have we not gotten past this? That, you should be able to tell the same joke no matter who's on the phone. And if you wouldn't say it because your advisor's black, then you shouldn't say it if they're white or any other race. And I can pick up the South. I'm from the South. So I know it from I know it from the ground roots. So I'm curious too about your training as an actor. I don't have any facts on this, but at least on this show, for people that don't have a degree in business or finance, so if you take those folks out that truly just grew up in the business world, theater major is just it may be either the most or one of the most highest percentages of folks that got their degree in it from outside the business world that got into financial planning. It's a very interesting transition because no one goes to theater school to become a financial advisor, right? I guess, how do you feel like that has helped or hindered, mainly on the help side, you as a financial advisor with the training that you did get as an actor?
Yeah, good question. And shout out to David Ray, fellow XYPN member who's been on your show, who's also a theater major.
Absolutely. Philip Olson was, Sophia Berra. We've had just a whole slew of them.
Yeah, a couple of things. So I started off in comedy, sports, and improv, and the one thing they would always tell you is where's the gift? And what they mean by that is when you're in the scene, don't try to force the funny, don't try to be funny. Your job is to listen and find where's the gift, because someone's going to give you a gift. There's going to be a gaffe. They're going to point to something. They're going to say something, and that is your cue to then go off that gift that they give you. And man, that's just listening. And there's so many times where I find myself on the phone with a client and I'm like, I haven't said anything in 10 minutes. And they're going on and I'm writing so much stuff. I was like, I got so much stuff to go on. I can interrupt them right now, but this is good. This is golden. And so that's been very helpful in terms of just being always in the moment and always looking for that gift. And it works very well for prospecting, because when someone's going on, and of course nowadays you can always record the meeting and get all those gems. But it's also good to reinforce it, because at some point you got to wrap up this meeting and get back to the gems of what was presented in that meeting. And if you weren't listening, then you're going to miss the opportunity where the client has already, or the prospect's already closed himself. They already gave you the key antidote of what you need to say to wrap up that meeting when it's all done. And that's part of one of the biggest lessons I got from the acting, is being a good listener. And the other one is just using your tools. I'm 6'4", 230 pounds. I'm a large individual. I know how to use my voice as a tool when talking to certain people, to slow it down, to speed it up. And one thing that my acting coach said was, your job as a large individual is you got to suck the oxygen out of the room. When you walk onto that stage, you have to be the only thing that people are looking at and people are consumed with. And so sometimes when I get nervous, and I'm like, man, we got a big client. This guy, smarter than me, more money than me, better looking than me. When I first started, I was like, my job is to go in there and suck the oxygen out of the room and use the tools I learned in the acting space. And then I realized that everyone's also a liar. And in LA, everyone's a producer.
That's a great way to approach it.
Absolutely. Clients will lie to your face. And, in my mind, I always think that everyone, you're a damn liar. I always say that in my mind a couple times, you're a damn liar. If I hear the word literally, I completely discount the next phrase of what that client's about to say. I'm literally paying 5% in fees. I literally lost $20,000 in the market last month, Chris. So I always realize, okay, don't ever take anything at face value. This person sitting in front of me is not a producer who's not going to get me a job. This client sitting in front of me probably doesn't know the ins and outs of our own financial picture. So don't just take that and run with it. But those are part of the big takeaways I probably have taken from the acting and improv field, which has been very instrumental of who I am as an advisor and who I am as a person.
So in the world of acting, I know there's many different, types. So do you feel like improv was the one that really trained you around being able to ask the next question, look for the gem in what someone's saying?
Yes, because in improv, there's basic rules that you have, just like there's basic rules you have when you frame a meeting. You want to check in, you want to confirm the time, you want to make sure that you talk about 2 or 3 topics, and you want to make sure you kind of round it back up and have action items. So there is some rules to a meeting. There's also rules to an improv game in the sense that, that's yes and you don't say no. You make sure you establish the relationship. If you have 2 people on stage, first thing you're supposed to do is, who is that person? What is the relationship? And then establish a kind of conflicting emotional space. There's rules in a meeting. And an improv, you walk up to the audience and you say, give me something. And they'll give you, you're in a warehouse. Great. And they build that scene. So because all you have is a warehouse, you have to find the gems and you have to listen because you have to now formulate a scene. And that's kind of where you are when you meet a prospect. You know a little about them because they'll give you some questionnaire of some sort. So they'll say, okay, I know they're retired. I know they have some money. I know they got most of the money in an IRA. So you have some building blocks before you go into it, but you don't really know what you need to know to see, is there going to be a connection? So I always talk about things in 3 C's. I know where I got this from, maybe from you or one of your podcast listeners, but my job is to care, connect, and be fully confident that I can do what they want me to do, and that I'm going to enjoy doing what they want me to do. Those are the only 3 things I care about when I go into a meeting.
I cannot take credit for that quote, but I like it.
Appreciate it. So, but to connect, you have to be able to really listen. And to care, you have to be able to identify those gems so you can kind of reinforce and have a deeper discovery on those items. I don't think that my son is fit to be the trustee of, why is that, Mr. Client? I don't think my wife makes good financial decisions. Well, why that is, Mr. Client? And you can go off into the deep end and have these personal conversations that have nothing to do with why they're in the room. But it shows that you care and that you build a connection. And then we as financial advisors, you should love all the modules of financial planning. Sometimes I hear like, oh my gosh, I hate reviewing insurance. Oh, I can't. I hate tax returns. I'm like, you hate tax returns? I mean, you're going to find so many gems and so much value add if you can just review a tax return. And be able to do that has been a powerful tool in reinforcing why you need someone outside your accountant or bookkeeper to fill out that team. So I don't know where I was going with that.
No, it's really interesting to see. I think it was Katie Hogan who was on the show that does improv there in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think that was her takeaway and like recommendation for everybody was go take an improv class.
Absolutely.
And for anybody, I have done it once. I did have some liquid courage because role playing and I guess fake events like that in training is really painful for me. It's really hard to get in the mode. So some whiskey helps.
Yes.
But it really was helpful because, like you said, there's a structure. People don't realize that there can be a structure to everything. I mean, that it's not just like, oh, you're an amazing actor. Congratulations. Read the script. That there's a process, and improv has a very different process than community theater or being on TV. But there is a process that you can follow and you can improve upon. I'm curious if you can help me with this piece. One of the things that I personally struggle with is when I'm talking to someone and they're telling me a story and they give me a gem. It is really hard for me to hold on to the gem and continue to engage in the rest of the story because so often you want to jump in and be like, well, I have a thing to say because you had that gem. So for advisors that, where communication may not be our strongest suit, I mean, how do you handle, I guess, how did you learn to handle some of that, and be able to keep the communication flowing while also being able to hold on to the pieces that you need to know?
Yeah. I mean, for me I try to get 3 to 5 gems. And if you give me a good gem, I just write it down, because for me, it's like chess. I'm just formulating moves to get the checkmate. And I need about 3 or 4 of those gems or 3 or 4 of those moves to get that checkmate. So I'll write the 3 things down or 3 to 5 things down. And then once I get to where I feel like I have enough, then I'll go to the whiteboard and I'll say, here's what I'm hearing from you, Mr. and Mrs. Klein. And I'll lay it there. First one, second, third. Let's unpack these. Let's unpack these a little bit more. Let's go deeper. And they go a little deeper. Then I'll say, here's what I think will make sense of why we should work together. And then I'll have them explain in their own words why it's important that we work together. And if we get to the point where they can do that, then you got a pretty good chance of obtaining that business. But what I've always seen from associates and from people who worked with me at my prior jobs is they love that first gem. Oh man, they will get that gem and they will just start jabbering for 20 straight minutes. They think they got them, and they're just talking, we do rock conversion, backdoor route, and it's all technical mumbo jumbo. And they think that they are the greatest salesman of all time and you've lost the room. And I've seen that. And I've also seen times when people want to avoid an emotional subject that is a pretty clear gem, or that they don't want to provide the right environment for things for that subject to flush out. I know I had a situation where we had a meeting and I let my associate kind of lead the way a little bit because I always want to get him some action. And the client mentioned talked about someone passed away, a member of his family passed away recently. And then the associate kind of went straight into, well, here's what we charge for our businesses. So, and I'm like, what? You sociopath? Are you serious? Are you serious? Yes. You're going to segue to fees?
Reel it in.
I think that you got to care. You really got to have a heart. You really got to be kind. You really got to care about the person across from you. Or you at least got to be a good enough actor where you can fake it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that you only learn by putting your foot in your mouth. You only learn by getting thrust into such an awkward situation that you jump to fees because it's the only thing you can think of to make the situation less awkward. And I think that's where you have an advantage. I think it's where folks that have been through, training as a counselor or a therapist have an advantage because awkward conversations are not awkward to you because you've had so many of them, whether they were scripted or improv or real, like that. Though you've dealt with them before, and many of us, tend to shy away from those awkward conversations. It's the part that I'm so jealous of from other industries is that. Imagine a world where, getting a degree and getting a job in acting goes something like this. You are in a classroom, you take, 6 to 10 classes on acting. You learn about, different types of acting and different types of career opportunities and some of the technical details of it. And then you go get a job as an actor, having never actually been on stage.
Yes.
How absurd would that be? Like, there's no way we would put you on stage,
yes.
Right? But we think financial planners can just sit in a classroom, do some case studies, and then be thrust into financial planning and be successful. And we don't have the training that on the art side that you got. So I don't know how to incorporate that, but that would be awesome if we could get more hands-on training as we're learning.
And even as a society, we were not good at being comfortable with a stranger having these intimate conversations. I mean, could you imagine going on a first date and in that first date, your questions are about something pretty intimate?
Yeah. How many kids do you
really
want?
known?
Yeah. Sure
Yes.
you want to get married? Like,
yes. And then this person walks in the room, has no idea who I am, and has to talk about these things. And he's like, I don't know who the hell you are. I don't know why I'm even saying this, but that's part of the process. And again, we don't practice this because it's uncomfortable. I'm not going to walk out to some random person at a bookstore and be like, tell me, why is your dad kicking your brother out of the trust? What's going on with that? She's like, who are you? Like, what? And so it's just a strange thing. I feel like it. And since theater majors are more in touch, because I think that they have practiced this many times, these very conflicting and tough conversations and scenes. I don't know, just what might be normal, unnormal to other people, I guess to actors, just like, nah, par for the course.
Yeah, we did FPA residency powered by XYPN. And one of the it's a 1 week program where various deans, as they call them, but very experienced financial advisors come in and you have to go through the planning process throughout the week and actually present your plan in front of the whole group to the clients in these sort of smaller segments. And I think that was the underappreciated value of that training, is that you actually have to speak in front of people and have other people say, hey, what you said did not make any sense. Or, you threw up a big, list of all these words and just started talking, but you didn't let them process. And, the art of communication is critical to what we do. And yet it's so overlooked. And podcast listeners know I get on my soapbox about it, but there's just so much opportunity out there. So I guess before we segue, for advisors that are like, yeah, you're right, I would love to be monitored in college for 2,000 hours while I, train as an actor or counselor, but I'm past that. Are there opportunities that you're aware of, improv or maybe other opportunities for folks to get critiqued on their communication style and their delivery beyond just having a mentor in the room? Any ideas there?
Yeah, I mean, I remember doing like a kind of a workshop at UCLA when I was a theater major there for non-actors. These are for like a sales team that came into UCLA theater. And we did like a handful of theater games. And, one of them is just the question game where someone's going to ask you a question. You can only respond in a question. Don't answer the question, which means you got to listen. Don't think of your response first. Listen first. And then remember the rules of the game. So I think it's very helpful and healthy to have these theater games, because this is all theater, right? And the way I see it is that the whole concept of, if you go into this big meeting room, everyone's wearing suits and this big wide table, and you're one on one side and they're on the other side, and there's this game of power, and that we always beat the market, and we are the only solution. We are the only path for you to manage your money. Everyone else is phonies. Tell us of your struggles so we can solve your issues. We can solve your pain. And that's kind of like, that's the setup, and that's the game you're playing. But if you accept the fact that, hey, this is a game that's going on right now, and understand that there are rules to this game, and that to improve the odds of the game being favorable, I need to be, and this is not, I'm not dropping any gems and saying this, is, people just need to do a better job of listening and understanding when it's their time to talk and when someone's giving them a gem. And because you've got a gem doesn't mean you have to immediately try to win or seize and go for the kill. And this takes time. I think with practice, I feel like there's a lot of, and nowadays, if you have a CFP, you can get a 6-figure job. I had an associate at a previous firm, smart kid, and never did any financial planning. Got the CFP. He thought he bombed it. He didn't. Leaves the job, gets offered a 6-figure job elsewhere. Never done a financial plan. Didn't like that job. Leaves to another job, gets paid more. So there is a lot of I already got what I got. I got what I need to be successful, because our field is asymmetry of information. We hold the cards. We have more information than our clients. So at the end of the day, we can always dangle that in front of them. You don't know what we know, therefore you're going to lose a bunch of money, or you're going to lose out some opportunities. Even though they have yet to develop some of the softer emotional skills, they can lean on that, and that's good enough to work sometimes. But it's not doing them any service in terms of how to really engage, how to be a trusted advisor, and how to really build that connection with a client.
All great points. So segueing a little bit into, some of your career stories. So you were at a firm before you ultimately launched your own firm. What sort of drove your decision to go solo? I mean, what did anything particular happen, or you just sort of, made the decision to go independent? Talk me through that process.
Yeah. I mean, my whole life, all I wanted, because again, I was orphan, raised in a foster home. The only thing that drove me was freedom. I want my freedom. I want to be free from the shackles of the foster home. I want to be free from the shame of being an orphan. And it was never driven by money, but freedom to express myself. And I feel like the RIA industry does a horrible job of capturing and restraining your ability to really have your own identity. You can't blog, you can't write, you can't be expressive. Watch what you say on LinkedIn. Watch how you do that. So you really don't have your own voice. You can't build an audience. They want to own the entire relationship. And I felt that I wanted to do more. I wanted to be more. And I felt like if I stayed at the kind of RIA space, I would always be a captive. I would never really truly be independent in my own, and I wouldn't really have the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And then also your podcast kind of indoctrinated me. You have some of the craziest titles of people who are, it's hilarious. It'd be like single mom launches RIA while pregnant and serving on SEAL Team 6. I'm like, how is she doing this?
But it's true. It's their story.
Yes. So it'll be so inspiring. And then you go on Michael Keach's and someone will be like, oh, here's how I launched a firm. I launched my own firm for 35 cents, like what? How do you do that? So that really said, you know what, I need to, if I truly seek freedom, and that's truly what I want, to really be happy of who I am and happy serving the clients I'm serving, then I need to go out there. I need to do this. The problem was that, I was at a firm that, and here in California, that had some serious reservations about individuals doing that. Other advisors left the firm to start their own firm, which let me kind of assume that that's a natural path that I can go as well. I had an attorney read my employee contract, and I know Kitchens did a blog about, certain states have, more stricter rules when it comes to non-compete, non-solicitation and whatnot. But, in California, it's pretty lax. And he said, hey, the employee contract doesn't really, won't stop you from launching your own firm and reaching out to the clients, as long as you don't do so before, as long as you don't, and reduce and sabotage your performance beforehand.
So as long as you don't reach out, like as long as you quit or resign and then contact employees, you'll be fine.
Yes, exactly. And I didn't, and I also didn't like purposely sabotage the company by just not doing my job and being lazy, and kind of tarnishing the brand of the firm. So I went out and I hit up XYPN and shout out to Travis and Scott Gill, because I don't know how anyone can launch a firm prior to XYPN, man. You guys are awesome. Shout out to Maddie as well. So I got the California registration. I'm like, I'm my own firm, Lion Share Partners, up and running. And then a week later, get a knock on the door, and some guy with long hair is like, you've been served. And I'm like, who's suing me? This is weird. So I look at it, I was like, oh, my former employer suing me. Now, thankfully, at Churchill, I was part of kind of business development. I was a ringer in like 5 or 6 different LA lawyer basketball leagues. So I was well connected, and I had a lot of friends in the higher up. So I was actually on my way to a dinner with a friend who is a partner of a top 5 law firm. His wife is a partner of the top 5 law firm. And another friend who's in that same firm is also a partner in that top 5 law firm. So I thought they didn't have, I was like, you know what, guy, I don't know what this means. I'm getting served. What's going on? And thanks to the grace of God, they took it and they took my case pro bono. And about 5 months later, we settled.
So what was the argument? I mean, what did you do wrong according to their, what their expectations were?
The reality is anyone can sue you regardless
Absolutely.
of what they did wrong. Because this lawsuit came, about a week after I resigned. So, and I purposely resigned in the middle of December. Why is that? Because most people are not going to be around. They already have their vacation book to really defend and reach out to all the clients, and all the clients are probably won't be around to receive those calls. So I know that they didn't do a thorough investigation, because I was served within a week. So I just assumed that I would have done the same thing. Some young cat wants to leave and try to take business. We're going to make an example out of him. We're going to sue him. And chances are he doesn't have the resources to withstand a significant, protracted lawsuit. And to be honest, I didn't.
Yeah, those are not cheap.
Those are not cheap. I mean, my friends told me, hey, it would have cost you $75,000 to $100,000 if we would have charged you our billable rates. Now, again, they're a top 5 firm. I didn't have to go with them. I could have paid $25,000 and went someplace else. But that is I'm still in business. So obviously, things worked out well in that sense. But the fact that someone can still go after you and still make, that emergency fund that you had tucked away to launch your firm, that can be easily gone really quick. So
Yeah, just never make enemies. I mean, you didn't do anything wrong. And I always encourage folks like, if you're going this route, don't just be right. Be like as ethical and as straightforward and as transparent as you possibly can. Because you have a right to leave. You have a right to start your own firm. You may or may not have a right to take clients with you. You have to review those employment agreements that you signed. Read them before you sign them when you take the job, because one day you're going to read it and hopefully you know what you signed. But, to your point that somebody can sue you for anything. And if you go out and, burning the place down like, hey, screw you guys heading out the door.
Yes.
They have more money than you do and they can bury you in lawsuits and, you can't operate and it's stressful and all those things. And then you end up settling and cost you an arm and a leg just to get out from under your $100,000 legal bills. So, so were you able, where the settlement, did it allow you to do what you needed to do, or did you end up with some handcuffs that are holding your firm back at this point?
There's no handcuffs holding back the firm. There is some, I would say that some additional restrictions in terms of future interactions with that previous firm. But, as I mentioned before, I have about 30 clients currently, and I can't really mention how many I got from the firm, but enough that my lifestyle wasn't substantially hurt from moving forward and starting with a smaller book than I had prior. So, and it also gave me the clarity of realizing that I got to figure out a business development strategy, because my whole entire career in financial planning has been at a RIA that's been on a TD Ameritrade platform. And I'm not sure if you kind of went into deep details with this on a podcast before, but the Advisor Direct platform, that's what started in the late 90s, early 2000s. And if you are with a large national IRA, all you had to do to get business was go into a TD Ameritrade branch, talk to brokers, mention your value add, and get clients and get referrals. And when it first launched at Churchill, Churchill's a fascinating firm because it only has, when I was there, it only did one thing. It went to cash. When the market goes down, you're in cash. They've been around since the 1960s. They haven't had a calendar year where they lost more than 6%. When I walked into, or when I'm doing my webinars, I know my sales pitch. I know why I'm different, and I'm able to get clients, especially from the last 15 years. We had two of the worst bear markets in market history. So you can see where Churchill was able to come in and get assets thrown away on the backbones of, wow, you guys didn't lose that much money. Now, fast forward that to this year, where now you have everyone agreeing that, factor-based, quantitative, academic, scientific portfolios are the way to go, and that you got to have financial planning, and that we do in-house estate planning, or we outsource into estate planning. Now, everyone sounds pretty much the same. And now there's 3 times as many advisors talking to that same broker. And now TD Ameritrade is also saying we want to do some more in-house financial planning. So we want to actually do less referrals and bring more of that business in, and we're going to pay the brokers more money. And now firms are buying out other firms. So that has been kind of my career trajectory in business development. And now here I am with 30 clients, and I got to figure out, how do I go and get in front of that next client? And that's been quite a challenge. And I think and to be honest with you, your guys' whole pick a niche. I push back on that, and I push back on that because that's so against everything that I've known, that I've learned, that I have been as an advisor. And that's why, for the last 6 months, I struggled that so much that it was almost paralysis, that I didn't even do much of anything. And it wasn't until you had Pat Brewer on the show where I said, let me at least hear him out. And then I was like, well, let's give this a try. And now it's a situation where it's like, okay, I owe the entire XYPN family an apology, because it has been a way for me to get more meetings, and it has been a way for me to position myself in a way of authority outside of being a generalizer. Yeah,
I mean, and we throw around niche like, oh, go get a niche, and as if it's not a challenge. And I do want to respect the fact that it's a hard ask, and I know it's a hard ask. when we say like, look, we want you to limit the people that you're working with, and we want you to limit down who you can work with, because the assumption is limiting the types of people that you can work with means that you're limiting the number of people that you can work with. But in reality, you can only work with X number of households. You have a cap. You can either work with 100 very different households or 100 similar households that are dealing with a lot of the same problems. And, what's the best way to get to that 100 number? And we've just seen it time and time again that the niche firms are growing faster. And we need more data on this, and we need more examples and case studies so that, because I get it. When I started my firm, hey, this is, I was the guy that said, we serve individuals and families regardless of income and net worth, right? Like I was the guy that worked with everybody. Anyone who would, fog a mirror or maybe not even could work with me. So I get it. I did the same thing, but just over time, we've seen it, just how powerful it is when you're able to say who you are the best at serving, because you are the best at serving someone and you are better than I am at serving that person. So how do we tell them that? How do they know that, who you want to serve? So, you mentioned that you're transitioning into, and working with attorneys, I guess. Is that just the network you have, or was there some other reason that sort of led to that?
That was the natural progression of like, where is my current pocket where I can have access to the most amount of a common industry, and I like clients that have a substantial amount of chaos and disorganization in their way of life. And I did a bunch of research, and attorneys are one of the most depressed occupations. Women have one of the highest divorce rates.
Really?
Yes, and in California, where I'm from, that's the second highest medium wage occupation, about $160,000 coming out of college. So there's ways. So an associate can come in and through just human capital, pay through a retainer fee only model, and then those who have moved up and maybe become partner have substantial capital where they can kind of pay through an AEM model. So I felt like the whole journey allows you to kind of find someone who can afford to pay you and has so much. Because if you're an associate and you're trying to get 2,100 billable hours a year, chances are you're not doing much on your personal finance.
God, that sounds awful, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does.
People in financial planning complain about like having to work a 50-hour work week sometimes. I cannot imagine trying to bill 2,100 hours. That is just, that's a 3,000-hour work year. Like, that's insane.
Absolutely. And I also think that it's, I get a lot of, when I kind of talk to other advisors, and they're like, well, that's easy to say, picking doctors or picking dentists or picking attorneys. I also think that, try thinking outside the box. I've, what I call like inefficient niches that I'm also kind of dabbling in the background as well learning in. The marijuana industry in California, laws, tax laws, strategies, insurance, they're all being created right now as we speak and changing. So if you can bundle a comprehensive package as it's being created and be first to market with this kind of turnkey solution for them, you're going to get a lot of business. Esports, massive amount of money in esports. Instagram models, YouTubers, cryptocurrency. There is so many kind of these fringe pockets that are going to make a lot of money, and that they have yet to be priced for risks, and have a kind of, again, a financial advisor speak to them directly that I'll tap into. And feel free for the listeners to run with that, man, because I think those are the ways you should be thinking about it. Because again, there's millions and millions of dollars being poured into esporters around the world.
Yeah, it's a great point. And typically we talk about, profession-based niches, attorneys, doctors, that sort of thing. But and while, YouTube or Instagram models and that sort of thing, I guess is would define the profession. They just have such different needs. These folks that are making money in such crazy ways and probably spending money in crazy ways to make more money in crazy ways. And it's so irregular, and, handling taxes, most people are not paying quarterly taxes, even though they're a small business owner, because they don't think they're a small business owner. Like I said, esports, like these things that didn't even exist 5 or 10 years ago. The marijuana industry is crazy to me just because of, banking laws, which I don't know much about it other than I know some states, if you have a state-based bank, you can maybe open a bank account, but if you can't go to Wells Fargo or Bank of America and open up a business bank account for, if you're growing marijuana and selling it, like that's a federal crime. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so much.
Yeah, and California is one of those states. So if you're an advisor living in California, you better find out where those banks are.
Yeah.
And you better find a 50-mile radius around dispensaries around that bank, and you need to go ahead and have some joint meetings and start building that expertise.
No pun intended on the joint meeting, I assume.
There's high profits there. There's a lot of green to be made.
See, this is a marketing plan right here for anyone.
So you gave me
lots of green to be made in your joint meetings.
You gave me
I like it. So you said you have an associate. So when did you, because you started the firm earlier this year, so when did you hire?
Okay. So I met the associates I had at my previous job. So,
okay.
Yeah. So right now, so I got 30 clients. My goal is to have 50 to 75 clients. And by clients, I mean those who are paying either AUM or a kind of flat annual fee, not the retainer model I have. And my AUM is different. So I do what I call net contributed capital, because I don't want to be tracking the market. I want to say, hey, you gave me $1 million. That's the net contributed capital you gave me at that time. If that's all you give me in the market and the account goes to $3 million, you're only going to be billed that $1 million you gave me. The market gave you that growth. That's your growth.
Oh, interesting. So if someone comes to you with no assets and you help them build, you're never going to charge them on those assets, or is there like a line, up to a certain amount? Yeah,
if they come with no assets, then they're building on now on the human capital side, right? So now they're building on their cash flow. So an associate comes in and say, Chris, I got a negative $50,000 net worth because I got this huge student loans, but I'm making some good cheese. I'll pay you $400 a month. Then that's what they're going to pay me. And,
very interesting. And I have never heard of that before.
Yeah, because I feel like for me, in LA, I live in Brentwood, not Bowling, we're in control. And you have to, and especially since, again, I was bringing my clients from my previous firm over, and I wanted to have nice nuggets, something different to really drive that value add. And I felt like using the net contributed capital was a way to say, here's how I'm going to save you compounded fees over the next 10, 20 years. And I just kind of liked it. I remember me talking to Scott Gill, and he's like, I don't know what you're doing. I haven't heard of this. It might be in general.
I have not either.
Yeah,
and if Scott hadn't heard of it, it doesn't exist. I think he and his team have registered like 350 RIAs. So he's the boss now on what people do.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I can argue with it and say it's a terrible idea, or you can say it's the greatest idea, and it's working for you and the clients that you want to be working with. So it sounds complicated to track, but if you've got a mechanism for tracking it, then no big deal.
Yeah, I'm looking to pretty much change it by the end of this year. I'm pretty much going to go to say a flat annual fee. Just say, hey, clients.
So no asset based fee at all.
Yeah. So clients on the financial capital side, I would say, based on type of work you're asking me to do, it's going to be $7,000 a year. It's going to be $9,000. It's going to be $10,000. It's going to be. I'm just going to tell you that number, and I'm just going to bill it flat.
Okay. So and that'll include financial planning and asset management.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I do think, and I'm guilty of this as well, that sometimes as advisors, we try to go too far in being fair to our client or creating the perfect fee structure, when in reality, like, clients care, what's it going to cost me? And you can come up with that calculation a million ways to Sunday and have this fancy calculator that spits out a number, but ultimately it costs you this much. Can you show enough value to have your client pay you that fee? Yes or no? If no, lower your fee or increase your value. I don't think there's any right way or wrong way to do it. Remains to be seen how, because we haven't had a lot of firms that, have been on flat fee or retainer fee for long enough. We have a few out there. I mean, Steve Lockshin with Advice Periods running retainers. Yes. I think he's running like $100,000 retainers, yes, which helps. So we know it can be done. It's just different. It's new, and that's okay. That's what we're all about here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some of the big projects that you're working on now, sort of going forward? So you said you want to add another 20 to 40 clients. I'm not sure if you said a date. You want to be at 50 to 75 clients by the end of this year?
No, I want to be about 50 to 70 clients by the end of next year. And I'm pretty much, so my goal is to be a lifestyle firm, a solo practitioner. I do not want to have a ton of employees. I resent even having one employee. To be honest, I like the virtual outsource solution. I like call Ruby. I love finding these other to get the same job done. And then I'm working right now on what I call Cash Fit, which is kind of like an online kind of class format way of financial planning from start to finish. That would probably be selling at about $500. So anytime I get someone who I feel like, hey, you know what, I can help you. I want to help you. It's just not going to be cost efficient for me. Go to this program. Take some time, go to this program. Once you get through it, hit me up, pay me hourly, and I'll fill the holes.
And you said you're working on an ebook as well?
Yeah, the ebook right now, Financial Planning Consideration for Attorneys. That's pretty much going through the kind of create space, I guess, editing and illustration right now.
So Create Space, just for listeners who don't know, is Amazon's self-publishing platform, which is awesome. That's how we publish the monthly retainer book. That platform is great.
Yes.
I mean, you can print a book like the monthly retainer book costs us $2.19 to print. We have Elizabeth Dunn, the author of Happy Money, coming. Will be presenting at our conference, and we were trying to get her book, and like she can't get her book for cheaper than like $17 a piece because they're all from a publisher house. Like she can't even buy us, 500 books for the advisors that'll be there. But Amazon can do it for $2.19. So welcome, welcome to technology.
Absolutely. I'm also thinking about doing I'm Irish enrolled agent. I nerd out on taxes, and I have so many times I meet a client. They're like, I already asked them, like, what are you paying? Do you have your returns done? And I have a client be like, it's a very simple solo practitioner service-based firm. He's like, I'm paying $2,000 for my S corp to be filed. I'm 11.
Oh, ma'am.
I'm like, I will take that business and cut it in half. So I've been, I'm working on kind of launching that and doing pretty much basic 1040, simple service-based corporate returns, estimated taxes, some tax planning. And I got, again, a shout out to another one of the podcasts I learned on, I listened on your show. I forgot the name of the individual. He was out in Baltimore, and he's like I listened to that podcast, and I kind of liked what he was doing. And he used the tax season to.
I'm having to pull it up too to see if I can find. Is it Scott Snyder that? Let's see, is he in Baltimore?
He works as a pharmacist. That's his niche. But anyway, it was a fantastic podcast episode. But I was like, that's a smart idea, especially if you already dabble in that space and you have a background there. That's a good way to kind of, I won't say upsell, but if you have clients that are already overpaying and it's down the path that you're comfortable going with on the tax side, then gobble it up.
Tim Baker with Script Financial. That's who it was.
Yes,
I believe
that's it. Yeah. Shout out,
Tim. Yep. Sorry, Tim. We should remember that.
That's funny. And then personally, I'm doing a lot of nonprofit work. I'm fortunate to be where I'm at. A lot of people have helped me from when I was a little kid. Gave me clothes, gave me shelter, gave me food, to give me clothes and shelter and food when I was at UCLA. I didn't know what I was doing. That I think it's important for me to kind of, especially as a minority, to kind of go back and do it, provide some pro bono work in my community and kind of speak to the youth out there who are kind of going through the same kind of frustrating foster home, emancipation process that I went through. A lot of people don't make it to where I made it. Most people end up going to jail, doing drugs, end up in the military. Not saying that's a bad thing, but they get kind of
if it's not the path they want, yes. It's just the only path they have.
Absolutely. So I feel like I have a responsibility to make sure that I am available for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to understate. I mean, the path that you've taken from being a homeless theater major with no background in financial planning, African American, getting into financial planning, like that's just an incredible story. Like to go from one to the other is just insane and just so amazing and speaks to your resilience. I know people ask me all the time, like, what do you learn from the podcast? What's the thing that helps people be successful? And it all comes down to how hard are you willing to work? Because nobody on this show that's finding success that has made this their career is lazy. No one's sitting back waiting on the clients to show up, waiting on the money to show up, seeing what happens. Like everyone is just going after it. And, you can't sit back. You got to be hungry. And if you're not hungry, then go take a salary because we need people that are a little less hungry taking salaries. Many of us are hiring employees, right? That's okay. No one ever said you have to go start a firm or that this is the right option for you. But if you want it, if you want to be successful and want to learn from the success stories we've had on this show, you got to go after it. You got to be willing to do what it takes and show up for an interview for the wrong Chris Jackson. And you never know.
Exactly. Yes. And to the listeners out there, I'm not jacking the plot of The Pursuit of Happiness. I had a client call me out on that one. He's like, are you sure you're just not jacking the plot of Pursuit of Happiness? I'm like, no, this is my life story.
I was thinking like, this is a movie right here. And you're absolutely right. Like it's so, and Will Smith would be a great person to play for this, for this. Or I guess you can play yourself. You know what you're doing. Yes. Some of us can't get in front of a camera. So Chris, as just what an amazing episode with just so many gems in here. So as we're coming to a close, if you can pick just one thing, that one piece of advice you wish you could go back and give your younger self that other advisors might be able to learn from, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
I would say that your job is not to defend the firm's honor. Your job is to listen. And I remember when I first started, I would take it so personal anytime someone had something, anything negative to say about the firm. And I'll go home and I'll recreate, like Professor Nash on the whiteboard, the argument and what I should have said. And here's how I should have got them. And here's where they're wrong. Here's where the facts are wrong. And here's how they're don't. When a client is calling you and a client is mad and they're yelling and I'm down $20,000 when they're down $2,000, don't cut them off. Don't correct them. Let them vent. A lot of your clients are in high power, high stress professions, complicated personal relationship situations. You are just a person that they feel like in that time that they want to vent and they want to yell at and they want to use you or your firm or the performance as the reason why they want to yell. I have clients I've had for years, good people, and sometimes they call and rip into me and I put that phone on mute. I go to ESPN.com and I see when are the Lakers playing. And I go to Gmail and I see, did I ignore my mom, my adopted mom's email, and I just let them have their moment. Don't feel like you have to go point by point and defend every single fault, wrong, or perceived ill will that has been presented to them by the company. That's probably the best thing I can give to someone who's young.
Man, that is tough situations to deal with, but a great point that, especially because you've gone into a niche that, like you said, you have a lot of high stress clients that are dealing with a lot, and sometimes they just snap on you. And we hope that doesn't happen and that it, calms over time, but, be willing to deal with it if those are the types of clients that you want to work with. So, well, Chris, thank you so much for taking time, come on the show, share your story. This was just awesome and an inspiration for folks to know that you really can do it. Just that it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of energy, a lot of effort. It's going to take someone taking a chance on you, maybe. Yes. But those people are out there, and you can do it. So thank you for coming on and sharing that inspirational story with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Alan.
This month's episodes were brought to you by AdvicePay, the final piece to the puzzle of how to implement a fee-for-service financial planning program at your firm. Getting paid while avoiding custody is necessary to offer services to clients that don't yet have assets being managed by the firm. See it for yourself by signing up for a 14-day free trial of the platform at www.advicepay.com. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.